Okay. My screen is telling me that I am live and in living color. Give me just one moment. So we begin today's session with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, with Allah's signature, the merciful benefactor, the merciful redeemer. I am your international instructor, Benjamin Bilal, coming at you live and in living color on this 17th day of the month of March 2024. This is the Ramadan session being sponsored by Masjidullah Inc. out of Philadelphia, PA, the city of brotherly and sisterly love. It's all being recorded for posterity, so anyone who misses this session need not worry. All right, so here we go. As I greet you in the greetings of peace that obligate each and every one of us to keep the peace, that greeting is given to us in Al-Qur'an. Assalamun alaikum to you all. We're going to begin today's session where we left off yesterday, speaking about the important ideas that are contained in each letter of the word Ramadan. We went through Ra yesterday. We went through the letter Mim yesterday, the Ma part of Ramadan. And today we're going to go through the Dawn part, which is from the letter Dod. I told you that the letter Ra represents the sun and its intensified heat. The letter Mim represented the moon and how the moon is able to pull on the tides here on Earth. So the moon is attracting a water content and a water quality. So we now thus far have two letters, Rama, which we began with yesterday. If you missed that, then you have to get the replay of that. And we'll tell you how to do that at the end of this discourse. Inshallah, someone will remind me. But we have the sun in the word Ra. We have the moon in the second syllable, Ma, which is the letter Mim, which means water in Arabic. And now we're dealing with the letter Dod in the last syllable of Ramadan. The N at the end of dawn is a suffix. It's not a part of the root word. The root word is actually Ramida. That's it. From that, they developed the word Ramadan. So keep that in mind also. Now let's talk about this letter Dod. We already established, repeating, that Ra represents the sun. So we're dealing with heavenly bodies now. The sun. The letter M is dealing with the moon. And that's dealing with the coolness of the waters. Now we're dealing with Dod. The letter Dod represents the earth. But not just the earth in its productivity, not at all. It's talking about the earth in its weakness due to the burning heat of the sun and the inundating flow of the waters being motivated by the moon. When tidal waves and these kinds of things happen because of solar flares and all of the other phenomena that happen in the cosmos, it has a serious impact upon life on earth, is the point. So Dod is not just earth as we think about earth. Dod is actually the weakness in the earth due to this bombardment, especially of the sun's heat. So if you ask the average Quranic scholar, at least, or maybe Arabic scholar, they're going to tell you that the word Ramadan means scorched earth or scorching heat. It's not your average heat. Now, when you think about heat, I want you to think about your passions, the nature of passions operating within you. When they become extreme to the point where it begins to burn out the life force in your activities, we call it being burned out. Even when people overeat, we say, I'm burning out on that ice cream. I'm burning out on that cake. See, we call that burning out. And when we become over inundated by water, water represents emotions. So we can become overly inundated by our own extreme emotions. when we're just feeling all of the way out of the circle of what should be normal in terms of our feelings and our emotions. You say one little thing to somebody and they get bent all out of shape. You say, what are you getting all bent out of shape for? Well, I don't know why you had to say that about me. It wasn't even about you. And people just go cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs from minor things that are impacting them, just like that sun is impacting the earth. And it is also being impacted by water. Water can drown out life. We know water is necessary for all living things, but water in the form of a flood or an inundation in a particular area can actually drown out all of the living things in that area. And that's how we do with our emotions. Unfortunately, we drown out our relationships because we become overly emotional. We lose jobs because we are too emotional in the office, in the workplace. We become too emotional. So Dod now represents the earth. So now we have the sun, we have the moon, and we have the earth in orbit. We're talking about the word Ramadan. Ra is the sun, Ma is the moon, Dod is the earth, but not in its regular format. We're talking about the earth in its weakness because of the exposure to that burning heat of the sun and to the inundating flow of the waters that are being motivated by the moon when the moon begins to pull on the tides. All of these things, dear listeners, are talking about activities that are taking place inside of me and you. Imam W.D. Muhammad said that the human is the invisible you within. He never said that a true human is this flesh and blood, these color tones that we carry, brown and almost black and almost white and yellow and so-called red people and all that. He never said that that's what represents the true human. The true human has always been represented by the activities, the invisible flow of activities that are taking place within the human being, within your system. So that's what Ramadan is addressing. It's not addressing your physicality. Believe it or not, it's not even really addressing your ability to abstain from food, drink, and sex. Those are physicalities. That's not the major message. People have been fasting since people have been people. People have been fasting because they didn't have no food and they had to fast. Allah tells you in the Quran that they were doing this before you got here. Fasting was inscribed upon you as it was inscribed upon those before you. You don't know how far back into antiquity fasting actually is as a practice. It was nothing new. People knew, in fact, the average animal knows that if it becomes sick, especially, it stops eating. It might lick some water up out the pond or out the lake, but it's going to stop eating. Your dog, if your dog gets too sick, the dog is not going to want to feed from that feeding bowl for that time, for that moment. So this is not something new. And Allah says, "Alam al-insana ma lam ya'lam," that He taught the human being that which he and she were before not knowing. The Quran, I repeat, and this is a challenge for the average intellect in the Muslim world. The Quran was revealed for purposes of providing levels of insight and inspiration that before were not available to you prior to this revelation hitting planet Earth. You could not. That's what that means. Malam ya'lam means that not only did you not know it, you could not have known it unless Allah revealed it to you. You see how that goes? So if people were already knowing about fasting, then the Quran didn't come to reveal to you what fasting was. When you read the ayat on Ramadan, which we're about to do, you'll understand it right away. So just keep paying attention. Whatever you pay attention to, it expands according to science. If you're not paying attention, that thing right in front of you becomes just a minuscule thing, or you might overlook it altogether. Somebody might ask you, "Did you see that?" I don't know what you're talking about. I was thinking about Susie. But get your mind off of Susie, off of bow-legged Susie, and put it on the thing that matters. Put it on the priority in front of you. That priority is going to begin to open up. That's actually what fitra is related to as an idea. It's from the verb fatara. Fatara means it opened up and revealed what was inside of it. That's the purpose for the human intellect. It not only looks at a thing, the intellect has been designed by the source creator to also, and more importantly, look into a thing. Allah says that he created a Khalifa, not on the earth. Read it correctly, you Arabic speakers. Fil ard, fi al ard, in the earth. And you can see that the word earth also contains this letter we're discussing now, Dod. The earth is called El Ard. Ard. Heavy D, not the rapper, the letter. Heavy D. Ard. Now, what else is this Dod indicating for us? As the sun and the moon tag team the earth with its brilliance and with its magnetism. So it's tag teaming the earth by providing electricity in the form of sunlight, but also providing magnetism in the form of moonlight. See? So there's an electromagnetic relationship taking place between the sun and the moon, and now they have grouped together to provide earth with its needs. But when those forces become extreme, we're still talking about Ramadan, when those forces become extreme and they begin to impact the earth in an extreme way, then the impact is what becomes responsible for the earth's despair and desecration, for the earth's diminishing of its true power. The true power of the earth is to produce vegetation, especially. It produces everything that's on the back of the earth, including the insects, the animals, and the humans. The earth is doing that. You actually are born out of the earth. You don't realize the scientific process through which semen is created in the male. But there's a direct correlation between the elements that are taking place and present in the earth itself and the production of spale, you hear me? The production of sperm in the male is what I meant to say. It's early, where I am at least. All right. So again, Ramadan is said to mean burning heat. And this burning is also indicative, as I mentioned, of our human passions, especially the lower passions. When your passions become uncontrolled passions, operating in the lowest sections of your chakra energy development. If you know anything about chakras, you know what I'm talking about. When they become extreme to the point where you lose the control, then those same passions that were created for good reasons by Allah become detrimental to your life and in your life. When they become extreme is what I'm speaking to right now. So you can become overly sensuous. You see a lot of these artists like Marvin Gaye or whatever, and they're singing one of those super sexy songs, you know, sexual healing, let's get it on. Every gesticulation, they call it, every gesture, every move of the body is made extreme. See, you see Marvin Gaye getting up there and he's doing all this stuff and pumping his groin out at the women, and I hope it's just the women. When you see these things happening, this represents the extreme level of passionate involvement that that person is executing at the moment. And it's those extremes that get you in trouble. You see the female who might have a very nice figure, nice curves and all that, but she's walking down the street and she's walking in a way that you know is not natural for any human being to walk. She's switching and throwing her hips out. She knows there are men behind her. Sometimes she knows there are women behind her who she wants them to see her too. I got what you don't have. And she's just switching and left and right. And she's trying to hypnotize you like the hypnotist does with the chain watch. Put you into a deep sleep. Well, that's what she's trying to do. All right. So these levels of extreme passion, extreme sensuality, they can make us uncomfortable. And the animals that have to traverse the earth, the common animals, especially the weaker species of animals, they traverse the earth, and that level of heat coming from the sun tends to dry out the earth. So here is where we get the true and significant meaning for the letter Dod. It represents the earth. This dawn at the end of Ramadan, it represents the earth as her precious resources become dried up and ineffective. If you take a look at the human skin under a microscope, and then you go out into the deserts and those dry lands, such as out in Arabia, etc., and parts of Africa, the Sudan, and these different places that have deserts attached to them. And you take a look at the land in those desert areas, it's going to look exactly like your skin looks under a microscope. Porous, probably dry if you haven't moisturized that morning. So your dry skin looks just like the dry earth that we're discussing right now. So Ramadan is the remedy for all of that dryness that has come into your life. What do we mean by that, instructor Bilal? Let's tell them. Skin represents your human sensitivities. You've heard this from Imam Muhammad, and I'm sure from other scholars who study this logic. Skin represents your sensitivities. Why? Because when you touch the skin, you feel it. It's sensitive. Right? You hit the skin, you get punched in the face or something, you feel that because of the weight of the fist or the kick or whatever launching into your body and into your nervous system. So the skin represents sensitivity. If somebody touches your hair just lightly without even touching your skin, you see it in cats. You can throw salt on the back of a cat and the cat will jump. And the salt never touched the cat's skin per se. It touched a medium. It touched an antenna that was connected, subrooted beneath the skin. This is all fitra-based psychology and science that I'm teaching you right now. So this Dod letter represents all of the things that are necessary for the continuation of your life and all of its sensitivities. How do we explain this? In the system of nunetics that we have been gifted with by Allah. Nunetics, if you didn't know, is the understanding of every Arabic letter as that letter is attached to the fitra itself, meaning to nature, to Mother Nature. Every single one of those 29 Arabic letters are rooted in an understanding of something in creation. For instance, the first letter, Aleph, is actually symbolic of your human spine, the one that's sitting right now in the back of your back, behind you. The back of the skeleton, that bone that's coming, that's Aleph. So whatever that bone is doing as an activity in your body, the attributes of that activity are to be assigned to that letter. This is how beautiful the Quran is, and why possibly Allah chose the Arabic language for the final expression of his revelation. It's not the only language that reveals this level of wisdom and insight, but it's the best suited language for this, for the expression not of Allah. Allah doesn't talk with words. Don't get that out of your head. Allah is not talking to prophets with words. Muhammad, I need you to do this and that and meet me on the mountain at 6:00 p.m. Don't be late. That's not how Allah talks to human beings. Allah talks to human beings through frequencies. Allah is the supreme modulator of all frequencies. You know how you've been sitting back and you get an urge all of a sudden to do something? You call it an intuitive urge. You say, man, I need to call my mother. I haven't spoken to her in 2 years. You just wake up thinking like that. It's in your intuition. That's a frequency in you. You call your mother and you find out that she had an accident, or you find out that she's in the hospital. You know, that kind of thing. Oh, man, I felt like I should have called you today. Hey, boy, you should have called me last week. That's when the accident happened. You got this late intuition thing. But nevertheless, it's an intuition, and an intuition is a subrooted feeling. It's not academic. Intuition does not happen in the neocortex brain. It doesn't happen in the moral and rational brain. You don't even know where that intuitive urge, that intuitive spark for that invention you just discovered, you don't even know where that came from, but it came from the cosmos. The cosmos is constantly speaking to the human intellect through the arena called intuition. Intuition is how Allah is speaking to his prophets. The prophet Musa, in the middle of the desert, he sees a fire. I perceive a fire. And nastu nar. And nastu nar. And nastu doesn't mean that you saw it real. And in fact, and nastu means that you perceived it intuitively. It came to you as an intuition. That's what anastu means. And that should give you some insight into what the word anas means, because it's from the very same root. When Allah calls all humans anas, he's speaking to your intuitive possibilities, your ability to intuit, your ability to understand frequencies and their modulations, and your ability to even tap into cosmic resonances to further this development that you call academic. That's how these major scientists in the world got their discoveries. It wasn't from being in the science lab per se. One of them was in the science lab, the one that discovered penicillin. Yeah, he's in the science lab and he's frustrated. He can't figure out how to make this stuff. So he says, well, let me just take a lunch break. He takes a lunch break and he comes back with his sandwich and it's half eaten. He puts that half eaten sandwich on the windowsill, forgets about it. And then the next day he comes in and realizes that mold has developed on his sandwich. He takes the mold and he puts that under the microscope and he discovers that this is the root substance and chemical combination necessary for penicillin. So who really discovered penicillin? Was it that guy, or was it Allah who gave it to him intuitively? That's what we mean by intuition. And we do it every day, all day long, and don't even realize we're doing it. It's going to happen. You're going to intuit ideas, but most people pay it no attention whatsoever. And that's what Allah tells you in the Quran. Most people remain oblivious to this sacred power, you might have to call it, within the human makeup. So Moses said, and nastunar, I perceive a fire. And he told his wife and child, hey, listen, I'll be back. Y'all just stay put, right? Remain still until I get back. And he goes to investigate that fire. And it ends up being some kind of burning bush, as they describe it in the Old Testament of the Bible. A burning bush. We're talking about Ramadan being burning heat, aren't we? And Allah says some things to Musa. You think he was talking to Musa like I'm talking to you? You'd be cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs to continue believing that. I was cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs when I was believing that. I didn't even realize that my intellect was so far off base, believing these historical narratives to be literal facts, when they are actually describing something major, much more important than literal ideas and things put in front of your literal five senses. These things are discovering something with an intuitive process that Allah has implanted into you that can take you way. It can take you right now if you're in North Carolina, like I am. It can take me to New York right now, right here. Right here. I can begin to manipulate situations in places far away from me. And I can do it all right here with this precious, precious creation that Allah created for us, called intuition and intellect, fueled by intense emotion. That's what Salat is. It is a process taking place in the intellect that is being fueled by the emotions. If you understand even what the letters in the Quranic word salat means, you'll understand exactly what I'm talking about. Now, they used to have to wrap the feet of the tender animals, especially the younger animals, in order to prevent them from being blistered from the intense heat that has been affecting the ground, the earth itself. So, what is this saying? That in the comparison that we made between the dry earth and the dry skin, you got to compare apples with apples in the fitrah. That's where the wisdom is. Again, you put that dry skin under a microscope, an electron microscope especially, you won't know that that's skin. You'll think it's a desert. You'll think it's a dry earth that can't grow vegetation. So water, as we know, represents your sensitivities, first and foremost. Water, we know, represents your moral inclinations, moral consciousness. So if that part of the earth becomes dried out, what is that indicative of? It's indicative of people who become devoid of sensitivity, people who become devoid of moral consciousness. And that's why Ramadan came, to press the reset button on moral intelligence, on compassion, on human sensitivity, human care, human concern. That's what Ramadan is designed to do. But what they have turned it into, when I say they, I'm talking about the traditional scholars on the most part, who call themselves Muslim scholars, imams, sheikhs, muftis, and so forth. What they have either inadvertently or purposely turned into something utterly different than what Allah is suggesting represents the extreme that leads you in the direction of what Allah did not want you to do, to the extreme of what Allah did not want you to become. He did not want you to become a hermit by revealing Ramadan. And Muslims all over the world become hermits during the month of Ramadan. What do I mean by that? They actually cordon themselves off from the rest of society that they call non-Muslims. Muslims almost kind of disappear during Ramadan. They're all sleeping during the day because they're tired as heck. They hungry during the day, complaining, attitudes, all of that stuff during the day. And then when the sun goes down, it's feeding time. It's like that movie From Dusk to Dawn with those vampire people. Soon as the sun goes down, they're out there pulling off people's arms and, all that kind of stuff. That's how we look to the intelligent world when the sun goes down and we gorge ourselves with food and drink. And probably 85% of the things that Muslims eat during the month of Ramadan is stuff that if you keep eating it, it's going to kill you. Yeah, children over there popping cans of soda pop and all kinds of stuff, eating, drinking Kool-Aid and, all that kind of stuff. And just overeating. You know how I know they're overeating? Just look at the garbage can at the end of the iftar. Just look at the average garbage can at these masjids and these Islamic centers. They're full to the brim with food that people are throwing away because they took too much out of the pot. You think that's what Allah is pleased with? I'm coming to you righteous now. Listen to me carefully. Don't get sensitive on me. Observe the reality of the situation that I'm outlining for you, and then follow the logic to its logical conclusion. Say to yourself, I have to become more disciplined in my appetites. Ramadan is intended to assist me in curtailing my appetite, moving that appetite away from those things that are doing me no good, that are doing me harm even, and giving this appetite a different focus. That's what Ramadan is designed to do, so that the insensitivities that have built up over the years, insensitivities to other humans, especially to people who don't purport to be Muslim, we are so insensitive to these people, the Christians and the Jews. We call them all kinds of names that we discover from reading many of the hadiths. They're all kind of kafirs and all kind of munafiqs. That's among the Muslims. There are all kinds of things that we call them, and we say that these people won't even be in paradise with us. So what the hell? I'll treat them the way I want to treat them. I treat them the way I feel like treating them. Then you read another hadith that says that a small portion of the Christians and the Jews might be in paradise, but the Muslims will be the majority. You don't even understand what you're reading, and you can't back it up by anything that Allah has said in the Quran. Not in terms of those numbers, those percentages. That's not in the Quran, that the majority of people will be people who took Shahada. There is no taking Shahada in the Quran as an action. Let's continue. So that's your Ramadan right there. This is Ra, the sun. This is Ma, the moon. This is Dod, the earth, when it is in a dried out state that is unable to produce new life. This is the purpose of Ramadan, to bring life back to Ra, which in you as an individual represents your intellect. Bring the intellect back to life. Reading the Quran. The purpose of Ramadan is to assess the guidance that Allah has established. We'll see that in a moment. Bring this back to life, the moon, the thing that's pulling on the tides in you, pulling on your emotions, making you overly aggressive, overly sensitive to things that you don't need to go to those extremes about. And also to bring new life into the part of you that is supposed to be constantly fertile, productive. Many people have lost their sense of productivity because of the world's pressure, the heat of the world's pressure on them. So they become despondent. That's one word in psychology. They become depressed. That's another word. They become suppressed in their emotions. They suppress things, and those things might come out at the most inopportune time. And you see it as an extreme. Well, the drying up of the moisture in the earth is an extreme. You see cracks in the earth. You get it? And the social manipulators will put those things into the culture as satire. So you see the drug that they called crack appear around the late 70s into the 80s. Crack. You think they named it that for no reason? They know what these things mean on the metaphysical level. And they foist that upon the human population to make fun of the human population. They never tell you what the word actually means, because then their scheme will be peeped into by common people like you and me. They don't want you peeping into their scheme. They want to keep the satire going above your head. See, satire has the same consonants as the word sun, star, satire, S-T-R. Star, S-T-R. Because satires are intended to operate above your heads, like the stars. Don't tell them what you really mean. Give it to them in a joke and watch them laugh. And they don't realize they're laughing at themselves and their own stupidity. That's how the social manipulators manipulate. So the greatest thing that has ever happened to us as a people is that Allah has allowed to be given birth to many people on this planet. And these people have been gifted by Allah with tremendous levels of insight into the scheme, especially the schemes of Shaitan that Allah asks us in the Quran to fight. He never said fight Shaitan or fight Satan. You won't win. How are you going to fight fire? You say, I fight fire with fire, but you're not fire. You're clay. How are you going to fight fire with fire? Iblis is fire unless you become Iblis. See, then you can fight fire with fire, but to diminishing returns. You won't win. All right? No, the closer fire gets to clay, the more solidified the clay becomes. So you don't want to get close to that scheme. You don't want to fall into that particular rubric where you're using those methods to operate in the world, the same method that Shaitan uses, the same method that Iblis said he was going to use. I'm going to come from before them, from behind them, from their right and their left. And when I finish with these suckers, ain't none of them going to be fit for your glory to glorify you, Allah. Speaking of Allah, he's going to corral human beings. Now, he wasn't saying that face to face, so to speak, with Allah. Are you kidding? Now, why would Allah let Iblis talk face to face with him and all of these righteous people on earth, whoever you consider, Mother Teresa, I don't know who you consider to be righteous, I don't remember Muhammad. We have a lot of good things to say about him. Has he ever told you that he spoke face to face with God? That ain't how you communicate with Allah. You communicate with Allah by evolving your internal life to meet the frequency that Allah is most pleased with. That's how you do it. Let's continue. So the word for fasting in the Quran is Sawm. But Sawm, spelled S-A-W-M in its transliteration into English, Sawm is not fasting per se. Listen good. Sawm is a commitment towards being and remaining, listen to this next word, steadfast. You see how these scholars connect these concepts? Even in the English language. It's done in all languages, but particularly the English language. So it's a commitment. It, in and of itself, is not an abstention from physical food, physical drink, and physical sex. It's a commitment of abstinence from what those things represent metaphysically. Before Imam Muhammad passed, a few years before he passed, at a major lecture in Chicago that's available on YouTube, by the way, he said that, speaking to his particular community, of course, he said we should get deeper into the study of metaphysics. Now, most of you couldn't tell me what the word metaphysics means. But nevertheless, first of all, that's your homework. I'm not going to tell you what it means if you don't know. But he said we need to get deeper into the study of metaphysics. He said, I've been teaching it to you all of the time, but I didn't give it that name. He said literally, I never told you that that's what I was doing. He was invited to be a major player at a metaphysical college out there in Illinois. I believe the college was located. He said they invited him because of what they knew would be his contribution based on his thinking modality, how they were reading him frequency-wise. They said, he's going to be a major contributor. We don't really want you to come here so we can teach you something. They were in effect saying, we want you to become a part of this metaphysical college so you can teach us something. Because he was deep into the study of metaphysics as opposed to just physics. He was deeply invested in not just looking at a thing. He was deeply invested into looking into a thing. So this word Psalm represents a commitment that we make as individuals based on our own sense of responsibility to this activity. We make this commitment towards being and remaining steadfast. That means nobody can take you off your post. Do you remember that from the Nation of Islam? Until properly relieved. And that steadfastness is connected to the obligation we have to follow Allah's hudan, to follow Allah's guidance. And your own intellect, connected to your own physical body's concerns, will know best when to stop eating as much as we eat. Like I said, the animals know. When they get sick, they know. They don't wait for a month called Ramadan amongst the animal kingdom before they stop or abstain from eating certain things or drinking from certain places. They don't wait. The Fitrah tells them, do it now if you want to return to good health. So this steadfastness includes abstinence from not just food during the month of Ramadan. It includes abstinence from all foods, from all drinks, and from all sensationalism that is not in accord with Allah's fitrah. So you're supposed to be practicing this year in and year out, not just during the 29 to 30-day period once a year. Science in the medical industry now is telling us, they've been doing reports now in the last few years, especially on the effects of Ramadan, whether they are yay or nay, whether they are good or bad. And most of the effects of Ramadan, many of these physicians are saying most of those effects end up being negative. And I'm sure you've heard people say, if you haven't said it yourself, boy, I don't know why I always gain weight during Ramadan. Why is that? You're not eating all day long, and because you're not doing anything all day long either. You're laying up because you're tired. I don't know what. You're lying like a rug. You're out of it. And then by the time you get some of your five senses back, you're back at the dinner table at sunset. Yeah, I got to talk to you, right? You know who I am. You know what I do. I ain't trying to hurt nobody's feelings. I'm trying to condition your feelings so that a greater sense will open up in you called intelligence and intellect. Ramadan is here to facilitate the full forming and activity within the intelligence and in the intellect. The intelligence is ruling in your genetics. Allah clocked intelligenes, that's really what the word is, intelligence into your genes, your DNA, RNA. That's where your original intelligence is. The things that you're observing out here based on five sense observation, those are the things that are forming your intellect. And the word intellect means internal election, the things that you are choosing to take in, to assess, to evaluate, and to utilize. That's what the intellect does as a function. So don't confuse intelligence with intellect. The intellect comes from what people have contributed to the environment around you. That can change. Your intellect can change. You can be communist one day. A year after that, you can be Hare Krishna. I've seen it happen in my lifetime. People were stone cold Baptists one week and they come back to the classroom in another couple of weeks with a Buddhist garment on. Because that's the intellect making those decisions. The intellect is designed to make choices based on what it thinks is best for it. But the intelligence is operating based on native communications that Allah has clocked into the genes. So now the social schemers, those who are working in the direct employ of Shaitan himself, they call the Ash-Shayateen in the Quran, the plural of Satan. But Ash-Shayateen come in the form of people that you engage with in society, people who are running your office, people who are born into your family can be born and develop into Ash-Shayateen. The same principles that Satan operates with, but they're doing it on a human level through human exchange of ideas, of personalities. When you get your Snoop Doggy Dog, those people, they are Ash-Shayateen. Those are not true humans. They lie like a rug and they change their minds like you change your socks and underwear. They put their finger in the wind. Which way is the wind blowing? Okay, I need to go that way because that way means more money. So 1 minute, Snoop Dogg is claiming to be a Muslim. The next minute, he's claiming to be a Nation of Islam guy. And he's at the Million Man March with his bow tie. So we're thinking he's in the Nation of Islam. And the Nation of Islam, oh, we got Snoop now. But then the year after that, he's advertising for malt liquor or some crazy stuff like that. And being seen taking pictures with big blunts in his hands, smoking big blunts. What is he saying to our children? You think this is a man that cares about you? This is a man that is under the direct influence of Shaitan, and he's one of the Shayateen. He is one of the people who have dedicated themselves to separating the clay. That's what Shaitan means. Shay means to separate something into minute parts or particles even. Anytime you see that SH in any Arabic word or English word, it means to separate from something. Like Ash-Shams, the sun, Shams, it means that the light, the rays of the sun are being separated from the body of the sun, and they're reaching you down here on earth or some other part of the planet or universe. That's the sheen, that letter, sheen in Shay. If you call yourself shy, this is English now. If you call yourself shy, it's because you've chosen to separate yourself from populations of people or crowds or whatever. You're afraid to be in the crowds. You're a wallflower at the party. You had to be there because it's your graduation party, but you're in the corner. You don't want to dance with nobody. You don't want to talk to nobody because you're shy. The SH in shy means that you separated yourself out. If I say shut the door, what are you doing? You're separating this space on this side of the door from the other space on the other side of the door. We're giving you insights into this language technology called Nunetics. I don't know why in the world you would not want to learn this, especially if you're Muslim and especially if you are a reader of QUR'AAN. Ask anybody who has been in this class for 6 months to a year, not to mention those who have been in this class for 5 and 10 and some of you 15 years. These people are on the ball when it comes to explaining concepts in the Quran using particular words that have particular letters. And these are letters that they understand the nature of, because all of these letters are to be found not in the mind of Benjamin Blau. These letters are to be found in, if I can use this term, the mind of Allah, the mind of God, when he created all of these things, because every single one of those Arabic letters, as I always repeat, are related to something in Allah's fitrah, something in Mother Nature. And Allah created Mother Nature. You did not. Sigmund the Fraud, he didn't create nature. Carl Jung, he didn't create nature. Bill Gates definitely did not create nature. Elon Musk had no part in creating anything in this natural world. They can only observe from it and then benefit from it if they use it for the good and suffer the consequences either in their lifetime or after their lifetime if they choose to abuse nature. It will always come back at you. Just keep that in mind. As the commercial says, it's not nice to fool Mother Nature. I say it's not nice to fool with Mother Nature. So these rightly guided behaviors are done in an effort to increase our levels of Iman, translated as faith and trust and confidence even, and Taqwa, a very special word in the Quran that existed in the ancient Arab lexicon prior to the revelation of the Quran. What did the word taqwa mean? We're talking about important terms given to us in the Quran. What did this word taqwa indicate? The ancient Arabs, they were very fond of horses. As you probably know, they rate probably number one in the raising of stallions especially. They used to race these horses in the desert. They used to use these horses in warfare. Of course, they used to use these horses for their own personal transportation. So horses were high on the list of valued commodities or entities in ancient Arabia. When they would retire a horse, they would remove the horseshoes. And in removing the horseshoes, they would find that the older horse, who just had his shoes removed, also had very tender hooves, feet, so to speak, the hoofs, very tender from wearing those horseshoes. You know, they have to nail those things into the horse's feet. So the horse's feet would be very tender, and therefore they had to be very meticulous in terms of where they would walk. In fact, they had to be very conscious of the exact next step that they took, because maybe a small pebble might cause them pain. So taqwa for them came to mean the idea of being cautious, the intellect, being cautious, being aware. Because the very next move that you might not anticipate as being dangerous could mean your downfall. The horse could step on a twig and mistakenly fall and break its leg. If it breaks its leg, that's it for the horse. You have to kill it. A horse cannot continue to live on 3 legs like maybe a dog can for a little while. Most of these creatures, if they break a physical limb, that's it for them. But there are other animals. I raised a chicken in the projects when I was about 12, 13 years old. And they let me take that chicken home for the summer because it was born with 1 leg. But that chicken grew to be a full-grown chicken. I sold it to the pizza shop as soon as it got too big for the apartment. So a chicken can live, huh? Yeah, a chicken can live with 1 leg, but a horse cannot live with a broken leg. Right? So the horse had to be much more calculating in terms of the steps that it would take in any direction. That's what Allah adopted as a language. He evolved that language and put it in the Quran as representative of the kind of consciousness that we should have in relation to doing things that are not approved by God. That's taqwa. That's taqwa. It's from the verb waqiyya. Waqi. See, that T on the beginning of taqwa is not a natural part of the word. The root word is waqi. What is waqi? Again, for the ancient Arab, they knew waqi as being related to a saddle. The saddle still connected to the horse. The saddle that they would use for what? For comfort purposes. Ask a cowboy or anyone else who's used to riding horses, what's more comfortable, riding, sitting on a saddle, or riding bareback? And as fly as riding bareback might look to people who are watching you, it's much more uncomfortable and much more dangerous. Dangerous to what, Instructor Bilal? Dangerous to the gonads. I don't know if you know what that word means. Your testicles, mister. Riding like that, bouncing up and down on a horse, you're going to damage, you might cut off your future generations doing that. So that's the other reason that taqwa is used in the Quran. Allah is saying that if you continue in this behavior, if you continue not being regardful, if you continue not being cautious of each and every step that you take, making sure that it's not a step in the direction of Shaitan's influences. You're not taking steps in the direction of Shaitan's schemes. You get it? And what you're doing is actually saving all of your future generations that come behind you. How about that? You practicing taqwa is actually saving the unborn generations that will possibly come behind you by the permission of Allah. So when you try to be better, when you want to be a muttaqeen, a possessor of taqwa, even the babies that have not yet been born through your lineage, when they finally get here, guess what? You have actually increased the possibilities of them being righteous souls on this earth. It's a beautiful explanation when you understand what's being said. And that's a fact. You practice, I don't care if you came out of a life of criminality. If you decide to change your behavior, change your attitude, your disposition, your mentality, change your moral disposition, and do it sincerely for Allah's sake. Allah, I'm tired of being a criminal. I'm tired of being a sex fiend. I'm tired of being a bank robber. I'm tired of being a big mouth, loud mouth, no good, do nothing personality. Allah, please come to my rescue. Allah will come to your rescue. Allah says that he answers the dua of everybody who calls on him, even Jesse James. I'm adding that. Even Jesse James. Even a Ku Klux Klan member who sincerely gives up that mentality and says, God, I was wrong. I've got blood on my hands. Will you come help me? Allah will help that Klansman, that ex-Klansman. I've seen it on television. They had a black man, quote unquote, that was going around recruiting Klan members to become righteous Christians in his church, in his black church. You probably heard about him. I forget his name. You can find him online. He would meet them in a bar. He wouldn't drink. And they'd sit there and they'd toss him back and they start talking about how they hate niggas and all. And he just keeps talking to them. And words, as Imam Muhammad said, words make people. The effective use of words can change the minds of just about anybody if you know how to tap into their frequency. Humans are just frequency modulators. But because most of us don't know anything about how frequencies operate, that's when the world becomes QUR'AAN upon you. Yeah, Allah says that Pharaoh elated himself in the earth. In other words, look at the scenario Allah is painting for us. Pharaoh, Allah said that he elated himself. Allah, he got high above us. But then Allah says, fil ard. How do you be high in the earth? This book had to be revealed by God. No human would come up with that concept. No human would be able to come up with that concept. Being high in the ground. It's like the humans who are stuck on dope and stuck on drugs and alcohol. They call that being high, but look at how low they get while being high. See, Allah is giving us the most sophisticated tools to establish a fitra-based psychology. Instructor Bilal is working on that. A new psychology for a new America. How's that? How does that ring in your ears? You think America is over and done with? Heck no. America is just getting started. Imam Muhammad told you in 1976, July 4th lecture, which you can find on YouTube. He said America is just 2 years old. It was the 200th anniversary of America's founding. He said America is 2 years old. He said in that 2 years old, the child is just learning how to talk for itself, just learning how to walk. You get it? This is so beautiful when you understand it. So the child has to go into a particular level of discipline at 2 years old. And that was 1976. So you count the years from there. There are people in America that have grown up since then, politically, economically, culturally, and academically. But these people are not highlighted in the media. Some of you are like that. You are political geniuses. You are economic geniuses on your small level in your small town, or even in how you're handling your family's finances, like our brother William Saff here has his financial plan for his family, first and foremost. That was hard to find. And we had these people and had these people, the George Washington Carvers of our particular so-called race and all of that. They've been operating since the 1700s in America. The sister who invented the straightening comb, I forget her name, Madam C.J. Walker, she became the first African-American millionaires in this country. And that was during Jim Crow days, when they would lynch you for walking on the same side of the sidewalk with white people, so-called. So this goodness has always been on the rise, is my point. Always. You put a cake in the oven, it's supposed to rise. But if you stand there and try and look at it, you won't see it. It's incremental. And forbid, if you open the oven door, your cake is done. I don't mean done like it's finished cooking. I mean the air that will rush in there and attack those molecules in that batter won't allow the cake to rise. And that's what we keep doing. We keep opening the door. That's why our people are not rising in the way we should. What door are we opening, instructor? The door of so-called racism, blaming everything on racism. I'm not saying that there's no racism. I'm saying that racism shouldn't be a force that's powerful enough in this day and time to interrupt your noble goals and aspirations. That's what I'm saying. It shouldn't be that powerful after all of these years. If it is, there's something wrong in your black system. There's something wrong in your black psychology that's allowing for this level of oppression to still build and hold you back and keep you on welfare and keep you in the gutter and keep you with all of this immoral behavior that you're passing down or letting be passed down to your children, where your children are coming home now with no respect for parents, no respect for the language they use in front of their parents. When did that happen? Our people weren't like that in the 60s. That began in the 70s and the 80s. We weren't really even like that in the 70s. But when the music changed, then they started letting all of these extraneous influences into so-called black music, especially. That's when our children began to change. Now, our artists can hardly put out a CD or an album or something like that, or a download that doesn't have on the cover a sticker that says explicit lyrics. Usher, explicit. And every song, if not every other song, has something about the words that are used. You have a hard time listening to it if you heard it. But our children become acclimated to it. That becomes their lingo. That becomes the hip way of talking and rapping to women and all of that stuff. Stuff that they just lifted off of the album of lyrics. Oh, this is how you talk. We had the same thing in the 70s. We called it rapping. Listen to this carefully. It's all in line with the subject. The wrapping of the young, tender feet of the animal to avoid the blistering heat that was being meted down on the ground, causing the ground to become dried out of all moisture. I'm talking about the same wrapping. In the 70s, Isaac Hayes, James Brown had a song called Brother Rap. We were rapping. Opening up the song, Barry White. Listen to those songs. They open up with raps before they start singing. Who instituted this? Ash-Shaytan ar-Rajim. Very simple. Satan, the rejected one. Satan, the stoned one. Rajima means to throw stones like you do in the Hajj. You reject the stones. And because of our close proximity to Shaitan's schemes, we have become stoned out of our minds on the most part. So we were rapping. We are not the ones introducing this language into the culture. These social manipulators, these social schemers are the ones introducing this false language into the public. I want you to think about these things. So what is a stone? I'm going to beat around the bush a little bit because I want you to absorb this wisdom from every angle. The English word stone is a code word. Imam Muhammad hipped us to this method in language when he told us about the S word. He said the S meant two things, sacred as well as secret. So the S word, which we would call the sword that we defend ourselves with, you can defend yourself with one or two tools. The sacred word called revelation, and the secret word, meaning that we're not going to let people know right out in the open how we're doing and what we're doing and why we're doing what we're doing. We're going to do it behind closed doors as Masons. We're going to shut the doors on the public like the Shriners do, like the White Citizens Council do. We're not going to tell everybody. We're not going to invite the media like the Bohemian Grove people do. They meet annually in some remote place that you can't get to. And if you were to get there, if you don't have special permission from the people who are running the show, you will not be able to get in. I don't care if you're president, whoever. If you're not a part of their clique, you're not going to get in. And they are in there worshiping their owl figures, OWL figures. They're in there, believe it or not, doing some very nasty things, like drinking blood. You might say, these are vampires. Yeah, they're the original vampires, and they do worse than whatever you saw in any Dracula movie that you've ever were in front of. But they're drinking blood, not just for drinking blood's sake. They are drinking, and I want you to make a note of this. So you get the moralistic tendency in you to reject something because it sounds nasty. Get that out of you, because you won't grow scientifically with that mind. Do you know the scientist has to study dung to figure out what most diseases are? The disease is going to end up in your dung, in your feces. And they put that feces under a magnetic microscope, not magnetic, under an electron microscope. And they can see worms, They see all kinds of moving stuff, amoeba, all kinds of stuff come into that looking glass out of the dung. They can take a horse's dung, and that's the best uh, fodder for growing plants. The horse droppings. There are people who go behind the horse and pick it up. It looks like hay, and they use that. Uh, William Safir knows he's somewhat of a farmer where he is. He plants a lot of vegetation, and others of you who are in those parts of the country where you can do that, I want to live with you. I'm just telling you what's about to happen in the next, I'd say 2 to 3 years. You want to find somebody who lives in the country, who's got some land, or you need to start working on accruing some land. That's a subject for a later day during this Ramadan session. The point here is that these things are not nasty per se. They're nasty in your moral estimation. The scientist does not include morals into his work, into her work. They'd never get anywhere. Blood is nasty when it's outside of the body. Nobody wants to see blood. You have a natural aversion to blood. If somebody starts bleeding or gets cut or has an accident, and you're looking at the car crash and you see blood all over, and you say, Allah put that in you. But the scientist has to push past that in order to save millions and billions of lives over the years. He's got to push past the moralistic nastiness of blood. The blood is no different outside of you than it is inside of you, except it's not moving anymore. It's going to dry out, become clotted, and wither into dust. That's a natural process that Allah doesn't consider to be nasty. You think Allah considers your genitals, mister, to be nasty? Your genitals, miss? Whatever that is operating between you to keep life appearing on this earth over and over again. Do you think Allah sees that as that? Do you know Allah addresses those things in the Quran? In the story of Musa in particular? The human genitalia and what it means on the metaphysical level are given to you right there in your face in the Quran. But Allah does it with such eloquence and elegance that you don't even know that's what he's talking about when he talks about the fish that got away. You got to know what these things are talking about. Fish swim in the ocean, so do sperm. They swim in the ocean of the female's liquids when emitted into the feminine principle. Those things are just swimming. Look at them under the microscope, or in science, or in a good documentary on childbirth. So in the eyes of the Creator, it's not nasty. It's only nasty when you use it for the wrong reasons. So these sciences are in the Quran and remain, on the most part, unknown to humanity, because certain groups of Muslims have been teaching the world that the Quran is just for Muslims. Did you take Shahada, brother? Did you wash your hands before you touched that book? Are you Muslim, first of all? Take Shahada right now in front of me before you open that book. That's how we've been treating the world. I know it's an extreme, but I need to bring the extreme to you so you can see the real deal on how many of us think, or I should say, don't think. So in this generation of new Muslims, we have to approach the word Muslim in the way that Imam Muhammad left it for us when he said that whenever you read the word Muslim in the Quran, he said, I want you to interpret that as true human. A Muslim, he said, is a true human. Now you got to go all the way back to 1975 to see what he said a human actually is. He said the word human means humus mind, meaning a mind that contains moisture content. And what did we say water was? He said he was teaching you metaphysics all the time, but not telling you that's what he was doing. Water represents emotion. Water also represents moral logic, because morals are designed to keep you clean. When you think about what's good and what's bad and accept the good over the bad, now that's the real meaning for moral thinking, moral clarity you're bringing into your life. So humus is related to the moisture, the moral and the emotional content. And man, as he stated, means mind. Look it up in a good etymology dictionary. In fact, look it up in the online etymology dictionary and look for the word man. The first meaning is going to be mind. And then after that, it's going to say to think. So man is not just a noun. Man is also an action word, to think. It's a verb. How wonderful this information is. And it's the moisture in the soil that's responsible for the plant growth, isn't it? And Allah says in the Quran that He created you to grow like plants grow. Nabata, to grow like plants grow. So you need fertile soil right here in the intellect. You need sunshine, social consciousness. You need rain, the nutrients from on high to help fertilize the seed in the ground, in the soil, meaning in the soul. There are seeds waiting to burst forth, but you have to have the proper environment that is conducive to that growth. Water, sunshine, oxygen, air, spirit. The communists and the socialists will tell you that there's no such thing as a spiritual nature in the human being. The human being is mechanical. He's just like the ape. Darwin theory, right? He's just like the monkey. He's just like the horse. He's no different, and we're not going to treat him any different. Those that begin to excel, we're going to suppress them so that everybody can be even Steve and everybody can just operate on the same premise, the same platform. So we don't have to change up our game in terms of acknowledging when a special one is born. Like the Christians say about Jesus, a special one was born. Like the Muslims say about Muhammad, a special one was born at this particular time, this particular season, for this particular reason. You see how that goes? This is so wonderful when you understand it. Continuing. These rightly guided behaviors are what we're discussing right now. They are performed by us so that we might gain an increase in the levels of faith and taqwa, meaning God consciousness, regardfulness, and not just of God, not just of Allah. Taqwa, I told you, in its inception, had nothing to do with a person's relationship with the source creator. They didn't even know who the source creator was back in pagan Arabia prior to Muhammad's advent. They didn't know nothing about no Allah, except the Allah that they imagined as a moon god, a crescent god. They had a god named Allah. I told you yesterday, I think. They had a god called Allah with an elongated second syllable. And they saw him as the crescent god. He had a wife called Allat. Now that's a lot for you to fathom, isn't it? That Allah had a god called Allat, Allaat. Look it up. You can do that while we're on the line here. That was the female counterpart of the god they were calling Allah, who was a moon god who was in existence as a leader over the pantheon of gods that the Arabs believed in. They believed in 360 some odd gods, but Allah was the unseen one that was regulating from above all of them. They had to report to the big guy, but they were running the world. But they had to report to the big guy, and he operated through a minor god who was their major god called Hubal, Hubal, Hubal. If you go inside of the Kaaba right now, which they won't let you do unless you're royal, unless you have a lot of money, you can get into the interior of the Kaaba. Other than that, you have to just adore it and try to touch it and kiss the black stone and all of that pagan stuff. I'm telling you straight up, it's paganism. There's no kissing of any stone given to you in the Qur'an. That's from pagan days. And it's in the Quran. But that's a story for another session. Do you know that they were circumambulating the Kaaba prior to Muhammad becoming a prophet? That's in the Quran. Allah said that they're circulating around the house and they're whistling and clapping. Allah talks about that in the Quran. They were having a good old time around the Kaaba prior to Muhammad becoming a prophet. And Muhammad eradicated a lot of that stuff in his lifetime. In fact, in the latter portions of his life before his passing, he revisited Mecca and he instructed certain people, Bilal ibn Rabah included, to demolish the Kaaba. Oh, instructor, I got to turn this off now. This man has lost his cotton picking mind. No, I have helped you to lose your cotton picking mind that has nothing to do with how Allah created your fitrah. He did not create your fitrah for paganism. He did not create the human fitrah for ritualism. He created your fitrah for routine activity, things to do over and over again because it has a beneficial outcome. But he never created human nature for ritualism, where after you're finished doing it, there's really no discernible benefit. I'm not going to name any institutions that most Muslims submit to. Just think about all of the things you're asked to do, all of your all of your 5 pillars of Islam. Think about each one of them and say, at the end of that performance, what have I truly gained from the ritual part of it? It wasn't intended to be a ritual. Muslim advancement in this life is concerned with the increase in righteousness, in taqwa. All over the Quran, Allah is telling you that, but Allah says most people are not paying attention. You're following the beat of the funky drummer, the social conspirators. That's the funky drummer. He laying down some beats that you can't resist. So you follow his beat like the Pied Piper has people following his flute. And I'm telling you that the era for that misunderstanding is coming to a serious conclusion in this day and time of Deen. Serious conclusion. And Allah doesn't care 2 shakes of a rattlesnake's tail, or whatever they used to say. Allah doesn't care that your feelings are hurt, because he's giving an upgrade on the understanding of his Quran so that all of humanity can benefit from it, and not just the designated ethnic groups like the Arabs and the Pakistanis and the Egyptians. Oh, those are the real Muslims. And all of the rest of us are Muslims by adoption. Do you know that's what a lot of them are thinking and saying in some cases? And how do you know they're thinking it if they're not saying it? You know it when you visit their prisons and you see that they don't let black people, quote unquote, do anything except call the adhan. That's why they invented Bilal in that role. Oh, instructor, you're hurting my toes. Now at least take your big heels off of these shoes before you start stepping on my toes like that. It hurts. I know it hurts, but it hurts to go into surgery also. But what's the outcome? Better health, a new chance at life. So what I'm saying to you is that your interest in what I'm saying, at least, should go way beyond these 2 or 3 weekends. And we're going to leave at the end of the video that will be produced for YouTube the information on how you can become a permanent part of this weekly experience. We don't even like to call it the weekend anymore. We call it the strong end. You can't be putting out information like this every week and it'd be weak. This is strong information. So the weekend has now become the strong end. You remember the song by the OJs? Living for the weekend, 'cause that's when I party down. The world is living for the weekend. These Nunetics learners are living for the strong end. Every Sunday at 3 o'clock. You can join us today. If you're looking at us via Zoom webinar, all you gotta do is tune right back into that same link at 3 o'clock. And we'll be on another subject, but the information is going to be just as deep And just as important, let's continue here so we can finish this today. Rightly guided behaviors serve to increase our levels of Iman and Taqwa via obedience to what Allah calls Al-Furqan. See, if you read Surah 2, where it speaks only once in the whole Quran, it speaks about Ramadan only one time. It's only used once, which should tell you something in and of itself. When Allah wants to emphasize something as something He wants to universally institute, He mentions it over and over. How many times is the word as-salat mentioned, as-zakat mentioned, Iman? How many times are those words mentioned in the Quran? He mentions them because He wants them to become ingrained into your emotional brain that responds to repeat messages. But the words and the concepts that Allah does not repeat, it's because they are not as important. Here you go, stepping on my big toe again, Bilal. Ramadan is important. Listen to me carefully. Don't chop up my video and send it to Saudi somewhere and say, look at what he's saying about our religion. Let's go get him. I'm joking with you now. But what I'm saying is, be aware, be conscious of the proportion in which Allah uses certain terminology, because the less He uses it, the less important it is in the life of your human scope. And what Allah is doing is introducing the concept for those who want to participate. Here it is. Here's how I set it up as a system. Go for it. But it's never mandatory. The things He mentions over and over again, being good, ahsan, all of those things, taqwa, He mentions those words over and over again because He wants you, if you remembered it last week and forgot it this week, he wants to reintroduce you to that. But the words that He's mentioning only once is because He wants to establish it as a codified system and then let you go for it on your own. Do it when it's convenient for you to do it. That's essentially what the ayat is saying. Do it when it's convenient. If you're sick or you're traveling, yeah, you don't have to do this. Does Allah say that about salat and zakat? That if you're sick or on a journey, you don't have to do this? Does He say that about being good? About possessing taqwa? Does He say that if you're not feeling well, you don't have to worry about taqwa? No. Here we go. Let's continue. Ramadan is not just for Muslims. Ramadan tells us about the word Al-Furqan. That's actually the name of a surah in the Quran. And Al-Furqan, which means the discrimination between things, moral judgment, is really what it's talking about. The ability to discern what's good and what's not good and keep the good and get rid of the bad. That's what Al-Furqan is pointing to. Allah has instituted that practice as a disciplinary set of instructions that lead to the upliftment and the proper regulation of our human souls, not of our human ethnicity as Muslims who sit and eat naan and Indian food for Ramadan, or who eat fried chicken and French fries and Kool-Aid during Ramadan. It's not for those folks. It's for people who have consciously dedicated themselves to the ability to discriminate right from wrong, good from bad, clean from dirty. That's Al-Furqan. Ramadan is not just for Muslims. Any human being of good character and good intentions can read what Ramadan is and practice it without being a part of a Muslim setup or masjid or population or Muslim country or any of those things that we invented. All you have to be is human, true human. Muslims have erroneously morphed it into a ritual solely for the Muslim population, when in fact, Ramadan is a routine that's intended to put the human life back in focus as it retools our ability to discern and respond to the QUR'AAN. That means guidance. Let's look at the actual surah. Allah says that Ramadan is the month, and they put month in brackets. You want to know why? Anytime the translators put a word in brackets, it's because it's not truly being given in the Arabic. They like to tell you that shahru means month. But then why did they put it in brackets? If it means, they should have just left it out of the brackets. Shahru Ramadan, they say means the month of Ramadan. Why they put month in brackets? Because Shahru doesn't mean month. I'm going to give this to you in bits and pieces, and I'll tell you what Shahru means in the 3 o'clock class, if you're able to make it. If not, you'll find it at some point in the near future on YouTube if I choose to release it. Depends on what I say. I don't want to get strikes, as they say. And I don't get paid for being on YouTube. I'm not one of those people. I have well over the numbers necessary for YouTube to start paying me. But you know what happens when people start paying you? They begin to control you. I ain't that kind of guy. Anyway, Ramadan is the month in which was sent down the Quran as a guide to mankind, also clear, then they put in brackets signs, for guidance and judgment, then they put in brackets between right and wrong. Now look at that. Allah is telling you what the purpose of Ramadan is. Where in here, this first sentence that I read, which should be the description of what Ramadan is, in fact, as Allah has outlined it, it says, he's telling you the purpose. It's the month in which was sent down Al-Qur'an. As what? As a guide for who? Mankind. Does it say Muslim there? As a guide for Muslims? No. As a guide for An-Nas. An-Nas, the entire community of humans. And then also clear signs for guidance and judgment. That's where Al-Furqan comes in. The discrimination between what is right and what is wrong. So every one of you who is present, and then they put in brackets at his home because that's not in the Arabiya. It's not in the Arabic. This is the scholars telling you that you're supposed to be home. This present is not talking about being physically, Johnny, here, teacher, that's not the present that this is talking about. You heard of being present of mind, haven't you? But every one of you who is present at his home during that month should spend it in fasting. We're going to go over this more in detail this afternoon, inshallah. But if anyone is sick, and the word for sick is maridan, the exact same 3 letters that form the word Ramadan. Ra, mim, dod, maridan, mim, ra, dod. You think that's an accident on the part of our source creator? And maridan means sick. And I told you that the dod in Ramadan represents the sickness related to your sensitivities being out of whack. If they occupy the same letters, they're going to have related themes or related meanings. Not exactly the same meaning, but related meanings. Like your brother is not exactly you, but he's got related genetics, doesn't he? Your sister, related, even your cousins. They're not born out of your mother or father, but they have related genes. So if anyone is ill or on a journey, the prescribed period, then they put in brackets, should be made up. They have to put these things to justify where they wanted to take the deen. Made up by days later. And it's all ritualism. What if I don't make it up days later, which most people don't do? Well, ain't nobody looking at them. They say, well, Allah knows. And you think Allah's going to punish you for not fulfilling a ritual. No, you get punished for not fulfilling routines that are designed by Allah to help yourself, help your family, help your community, help humanity. Those are the things that you get your brownie points taken away from you for. Not being of service. It's an action. It's not a belief. Allah intends every facility for you. He does not want to put you to difficulties. He wants you to complete the prescribed period and to glorify Him in that He has guided you. And perchance you shall be grateful. Tashkurun, from the word shukran. Thank you. He wants you to say Thank you. But shukran is also consonantally connected to a Sanskrit word called the chakra. So could Allah, I don't know, could he possibly also be speaking to the idea of him wanting you to increase in your chakric energy potential? I don't know. That's just my educated guess. Now let's talk lastly about this word siyam, which they told us means fasting. Saum and siyam. And siyam is thought to be the plural of saum, and that is incorrect. Siyam in the Arabic language is the doer of this continuous action called saum. And this action is one of exhibiting determination and decisiveness. It's an action of disciplining oneself in a way which sticks strictly to the hudan, strictly to the guidance. That's why Allah says that Ramadan is the month in which was sent down the Quran. So the Quran and the reading of the Quran and the better understanding of the Quran is the focus, not fasting. He could have easily said Ramadan is the month in which I want you to fast. There's no fasting right there in that statement of purpose. This is the mission statement for Ramadan. It's the month, the collection of days in which was sent down the Quran. So, and as a guy, you should be looking to extract the hudan out of the Quran during this period of time called Ramadan. And you're supposed to look for that hudan, not just to benefit you and your family and the local masjid that you're going to run to for 30 straight days. You're supposed to be going into the Quran for guidance that you're then supposed to be attempting to figure out how do I apply this to humans when I go to work the next day. When I'm in the supermarket standing next to somebody who strikes up a conversation, I'm supposed to tell them, hey, there's guidance in the Quran. Do you know what salam alaikum means? You've heard Muslims say salam alaikum. Do you want to know what that means, Red? It means we're supposed to be at peace with each other. But you got Muslims in the world that say you're not supposed to even give that greeting to people who never took Shahada. So when you come home and your mother's there and she says, hey, boy, how you doing? I missed you today. You don't tell her salam alaikum because she didn't take Shahadatain. Because you don't understand the higher principles that the Quran is instituting. The people who Allah says don't do that to or in front of is because those people have violations in front of them that need to be first rectified. If Allah says don't make dua for a certain people, it's because they have violations against them, not because they are humans who didn't take Shahada Tain. So let's continue. Siyam represents the one doing this action of Saum. And Saum is referred to the exhibiting of determination and decision making that allows for you to discipline yourself in a way that sticks strictly to the guidance, not to what Sigmund the Fraud said, not to what your particular imam has said, not even to what Imam Muhammad has said. You don't go into Saum and Siyam and just stick strictly to what Imam Muhammad said, because some of what he said wasn't right. I don't mean immoral. I mean, it wasn't correct. And he came behind himself dozens of times correcting things he said before that he realized now it's not like that. I'm going to give you the correct meaning for that. So that's fine if you're following his trail for that. But Allah wants you to make your own trail. Read the Quran for yourself. Do they not yatadabbaru al-Quran? Do they not deeply ponder the Quran? Didn't say do they not deeply ponder W.D. Muhammad, or some of you deeply pondering the lessons of Elijah Muhammad. That's not what Ramadan is for. It doesn't even say deeply ponder what your mama told you. And a lot of that I'm sure was good. But you're not supposed to be focused on your mama or your local imam or your best, whatever that you like listening to and reading, and Bukhari and Muslim and all of these humans. You're not supposed to be focused on them as good as they are. You're supposed to be focused on the hudan, the guidance, so that Allah can deliver his message direct mail to your intellect and to your heart. So Siam reinforces discipline in an effort to increase our Iman quotient, our faith quotient. Now, we don't have enough time to get into the meaning of Muslim. We'll pick up on this particular point mañana. I pray that all of you have enjoyed the information thus far between yesterday and today, whatever you happen to be a part of. And we're going to do our best to start exactly on time tomorrow, now that I think I figured out the system that I'm operating on. And we'll pick up there on what the true meaning of Muslim is as a true human. You're going to find out what the connection is between Muslim and true human. Imam Muhammad did not leave us that detail, but he depended on those of us who were deep into the study of his language and logic. He depended on us to bring those results, and he said so. He said, my true students after me will bring you the details. I'm just giving you generalities. I'm just touching the surface of this information. He said, I don't have enough time in my lifetime to break down all of the things that have been given to me as a gift of information. So keep that in mind as I greet you in the greetings of peace, the greetings that obligate each and every one of us to keep the peace. That greeting is Salamun Alaikum. Thank you, my dear audience, as I turn the sessions back over to Masjid Allah, who have been doing a wonderful job these past few years at consistently presenting an opportunity for us to give you this information. So thank you very much. And if I have your email address, I will email you the replay. Salam alaikum.